Hello, if you've seen the thumbnail you're probably thinking, what the hell, how has this got anything at all to do with FPV? And it hasn't. The point of doing this video is I've just come back from holiday after using an Insta360 underwater against my GoPro, and I had some conclusions to make, and I figure there's loads of you guys out there and a lot of you will have GoPros and you might go on holiday, go snorkeling, go diving, and you're thinking, is this the best I can do about underwater photography or video, or should I invest in something like this? What are the pros and cons? As I spent a lot of time underwater, I thought I'd go through it and tell you what's what. My history on underwater stuff goes back yonks 27 years or so. I got an old camcorder and I had basically this plastic weird bag for it. It was actually a commercial product, but it's basically a waterproof bag and you could take your camcorder underwater, and it was absolutely awful. I was all over the place and stuff, and it wasn't very good. I then moved on to CNC cameras when I was diving for doing stills. This was 35mm stuff. You couldn't see what was happening. There was no viewfinder. You just sort of take a picture, you'd change the f-stop, take the same picture, and you'd take about 3 pictures for everything you'd want to, and then you wouldn't know how it turned out until you got out of the water. Eventually moving on to digital cameras in housings, and then GoPros. GoPros are very handy. But I have been let down by the current crop of GoPros. GoPro 2 was fine. Then I got a GoPro 4, which kind of sucked, and it ruined a lot of footage because one of ours developed some sort of fault where it kept turning itself off, and it completely ruined my daughter trying to take pictures of manta rays. The 7 seemed to work very nicely, and then I've got the 10, and the 10 is a terrible camera, I think. When it works fine, but it either constantly overheats, or if I'm in snowy conditions, as I go skiing, then and a full battery, I've turned it on and it turns off in 7 seconds and says the battery's empty because it doesn't like being cold. I often use it with this. This is called the Media Mod. If I'm out in the field, I hold this up and film myself because the microphone's very good. This constantly seems to have a problem where I have to take the entire camera out, take the battery out, put it back in, and stuff like that. So I'm not much of a fan of GoPros these days, which is why we ended up getting the Insta360 X3. I thought we'd try that out underwater. I've used GoPros a lot underwater over the last few years, and I was pretty happy in the sort of stuff I got. But I thought we should try this because often my wife is like, you were filming something and then something swam behind you, or you seem to be like constantly trying to fiddle with the camera and getting very frustrated with it. So we thought we'd try this. There are some caveats to using either camera. A GoPro is waterproof down to 10 meters, but certainly the 10s, 11s, 12s, as is the Insta360 X3, but you wouldn't film with it underwater because the stitching to get the 360 doesn't work. I think you could probably use a single lens and be okay. GoPro's just single lens, but so it's all right down to 10 meters. Obviously, if you were diving, you would need a case for it. In my opinion, both cameras need accessories to film nicely underwater. For the GoPro, I use this. This is an underwater housing, so they go down to 50, 60 meters, so you can dive with it. The reason I use it just for snorkeling is I can then attach a filter. This is a filter designed to snorkel with. The reason you'd use this is if you go down just 1 meter in the water, then you lose lots of the red color. And so you'll often find if you're just filming something underwater, everything looks much too blue. Those natural colours are gone even when it's lit quite well from the sun. So by using this type of filter, it puts that colour back. And I've got a range of these filters, so if I'm diving deeper in scuba gear, sort of 10 metres to 30 metres, it's a much more red filter that goes on. And this is the freeway. And the reason I use this is because really you want to point upwards at your subject most of the time. So I try and have this so I can reach out to look at a fish or whatever, and I can point the camera upwards, try and come down underneath it and do it that way. On the Insta360 you have this. This is called the invisible dive case. It is quite a big beast. It's got these 2 big domes on it, and what happens is you pop your Insta360 X3 in there. You'll notice it's got these 2 little, they look like small tabs. They are little things that help absorb any moisture, so it shouldn't steam up inside. And what I do in combination with that is I stick it on the great big invisible selfie stick so I can get this sort of distance, so I don't have to get as close to the fish as I did. Basically, a big human will scare fish off more than a stick will. Holding this underwater, you have to hold it like this, so the sun is coming down here. You don't want your lenses towards the sun, you want them like this. And I thought this will be okay, but I'm not expecting great things from it, because although it films in 5.7K, that 5.7K equals the 2 whole lenses. So each lens does like 2.8K or something, but that's the entire like 180. So by the time you're framing that up, really you're only getting a 1080p picture. And this only films at 30 frames a second in 5.7K. I don't know if this is down to like the processor can't go any faster or you can't write to card any faster. What I've been doing with the GoPro is filming at 4K at 120, and by using this, if the fishes move very fast, I can slow it down, and then it looks like they're not going as fast. With this, I'm like, oh, I can't slow down from 30 frames a second. That's my sort of minimum picture. So to be honest, I thought this might be easier, but I'm really not going to get the quality from it. Boy, was I wrong. I was so impressed by how this works. Let me give you some examples. So let me give you an example of what I would do on my GoPro first off. I would dive down, try and get close to the fish like this. You can see it's quite shaky. The fish are moving out the way fairly quickly, as I expect they would, because it's a bit scary. And then I would go back and slow this to take a little clip. And because I filmed in 120 frames per second, slowing it down to 30 frames per second doesn't lose any quality. We're just seeing it at its actual speed, and of course it looks quite chill and relaxed, but really I'm cheating a bit. And here's another clip with a shoal of pennant fish. I dive down, try and get as close as possible. They all dive down to try and get away from me, and then when I slow it down to try and make it look nice, it looks pretty nice and chill again. And my normal videos are basically little clips like this instead of the actual experience. The other thing you'll notice on GoPro, here's a real-time clip of this little blacktip reef shark. It's all a bit jerky, and you're probably wondering, hey, why didn't you just put hypersmooth on? And the reason is, it's crap underwater. In my experience on 2 cameras, both the Hero 7 and 10, I get these awful weird stretchy things happening when I accidentally leave something in hypersmooth. You can see it ruins the footage of this turtle because weird things are happening to the side. And very annoyingly for me, it completely ruined the footage of the one whale shark I'd seen up to this point. That and the other 50 people getting in my way, which was kind of annoying. But yeah, hypersmooth just doesn't work, so I have to turn it off, and that makes everything a bit jerky, and that's a problem on the GoPro. So now let's turn to the Insta. Just to explain a couple of things, all my footage has been imported into Insta360 Studio, and while I was on holiday, I did this on my phone, and the phone was pretty good. And this is just some of my first footage where I was sort of just swimming around. And first off, I love the fact that it looks like something else is filming me. Obviously, in here, I can move my footage around as I want to, and just swimming around as I was, I could get, I think, some really interesting angles just by moving the camera away from me. Kind of looks like someone else is filming us. Now, you remember me talking about where the water would look too blue, or everything around would look blue. It's slightly green here, but mostly sort of a blue colour, and basically it sort of mists out as you go further because that's the density of water. Well, there was no filter you would have seen on that thing for the Insta360. So what they've done instead is they've done this thing called Aquavision 2.0, which is their little AI implementation of things. And if we hit on that, it basically brings back the reds, and what you get is a much more natural colour of what was happening with that. So I just wanted to explain the process of how we did stuff there, and there's also a stitching option here for the invisible dive case underwater. And normally I'm using optical flow stitching, sometimes dynamic stitching's better. It's not perfect, I'll go in for that later. But I'll talk you through some of the clips, because obviously what I had to do with this, because you haven't just got one view, you've got all views all the time. But I made myself a few little clips while I was out there, and I'll show you a few of these. So I did loads of clip like this, but what I wanted to show here is how good the stability is. To say it's me wafting the camera all over the place. I haven't done any keyframes to try and change the angle here. It's just a single angle, me holding the stick disappears, and me slightly moving the stick around. But I think it looks really good. To say there was absolutely no effort at all doing that. And then I've got one, this is one I made on my phone while I was out there, where I have done some keyframes, because what I want to do is sort of show me diving down and then pan across to see kind of what I was looking at more, and then show myself again as I come up for air, because my freediving skills leave a lot to be desired. My breath holding is not very good, let's put it that way. But that was really easy to make in the on the phone editor. We had a very blessed day on a boat where we saw manta rays and whale sharks. Part of the reason I show it is, yay, I got to capture it really easy. I didn't have to think about it. I just held the camera in the water, didn't have to point it, and it worked brilliantly. Also, you'll notice it's much rougher here. We're whooshing about in the waves, and still the stabilisation is excellent. I'm whooshing around all over the place. The camera's going up and down, but it does look like it's keeping me sort of perfectly still and framed in the water there, which is awesome. And here's another I just made on my phone on the day out there, and it is gratuitous whale shark type shot. But yeah, we were really lucky to see this guy, because instead of just swimming, in which case there's no way of keeping up with him even slow, he kind of hung around and started swallowing down all the plankton there. Wasn't huge, this one, I think about 8 meters long, but pretty damn big when you get in there, and it really makes up for the very disappointing GoPro footage I had last time when I film it. I've got loads of footage that I still need to go to and actually make a proper underwater video. That's normally on my other channel called Curry Kitten Randomizer. That whale shark did sort of scare us at one point when he decided to turn around to us and kept opening his mouth. Not that whale sharks are dangerous in terms of they don't want to eat you, they're plankton eaters, but they're very big and they don't notice you because you're small humans. So if you get hit by that tail, it's breaking bones. They're not to be got in the way of. So we're kind of trying to get out the way as much as possible as this thing's coming through and he is not stopping. As I said, it's also good for recording stuff you don't know is happening. I was looking down at a turtle ready to dive down, and this little black tip shark came and decided he wanted to check out what that thing was hanging in the water. Of course, with the benefit of being able to watch it back in 360, we got to see him properly. And this next one's clownfish. In this clip, I didn't have to dive. Clownfish are quite skittish. If you go down there, they will hide in the enemy. If you can keep away from them and just have a bit of the camera showing, then you can actually get pretty good footage of them. So, pretty happy with this stuff. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, some of these clips may look familiar because I'd already posted them. And I'd posted them in a sort of iPhone friendly format in basically 9:16, so it would sort of, fill people's screen without them having to turn it. But in order to show you it today, all I've done is go into my already edited footage on my iPhone, change it to 16:9, and in some cases slightly reframe the shot. And because it doesn't film in any one aspect ratio, it films at a 360 degree, you're not losing anything. There is no native aspect ratio. It's just whatever you do with that 360 degree view, which is something I really like once again. And talking of just posting to social media, I found it very good for getting stills. Again, I'd just rotate the camera how I wanted it, I'd grab a still and I could post that, whether it's just us on a reef or trying to get close to these 14 juvenile grey reef sharks at the end of a reef, or getting in amongst these fish. It was really good. I mean, it's not high resolution, but for social media posting, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, absolutely fine. So to do a shot-by-shot comparison, I gave my wife the Insta and I took the GoPro to film just under this little ridge of coral where I knew there'd be fish. And one thing you can say about this is she's holding the camera, she's not pointing at me, it works perfectly fine. And this was a real joy, the fact she could use it without me having to sort of give her directions and stuff. Here's what the real-time footage of that looks like. Here you can see me diving down, getting under that coral head and shoving the camera into the fish there. And of course, what I would do with this footage is slow it down and see what I could get. And this looks like this. Once again, taking the part where I've got the fish in frame, slowing it down to try and take those shakes out and stuff, and it doesn't look too bad there. It looks like the fish are just sort of hanging in the water a bit. At this point we swapped cameras and I gave her the GoPro, and you will see the first problem. She was convinced she was pointing the GoPro at me, but you will see me disappear completely out of frame here. The GoPro is just more difficult to use. You've got a viewfinder on it, but it's not necessarily that easy to see underwater and see what you're doing. You can see me there just poking the pole into the fish, and let's see how that looked. And that's what that little Insta dive looked like. Admittedly, I'm cutting this so you see the full thing rather than just, you know, me pointing in one direction, but it's kind of how I do it, I guess. So we get to see the fish, we can spin around as we lose them, but we get a pretty good picture. If we compare a vaguely comparable frame, and it's not always comparable because half the fish moved out of the way, you can see that the GoPro tends to handle light a lot better. It's got that filter which should give a more natural colour than using this sort of AI generative thing to try and put the reds back in. And yeah, under the right circumstances, the GoPro will blow away the Insta in a sort of single lens idea, because of course it's filming at 4K at a higher frame rate. It's got a proper filter. It's just the fact that the effort I have to make to get little snippets from GoPro is way harder than just poking the Insta360 vaguely around it. But let's have a look at some of the weaknesses of the Insta360 underwater. Okay, well, first off, and you've probably noticed it, is stitching underwater can be a bit all over the place. If I play this clip in studio, you can kind of see there's this shimmer here as we're trying to take a picture of this moray eel, and we're getting some strange little artifacts. It's not too bad if I sort of stop it in still, and you can see it a lot more if I was to, you know, use the wrong type of stitching. So if I said normal, you can see very clearly where the stitch line is. So the dive case underwater, and as I said, sometimes it looks a little bit better with dynamic stitching. Not in this case, I don't think. So you can still kind of see that wavy line through there. So optical flow is better in most places. I've generally found that the calibration is terrible, makes it worse. If we do that, then that's not bad actually that time. It's still there. We can still see the wave through it, and trying to do it in a custom way is horrendous. There's nothing you can do to solve that. They don't seem to make it enough so you can do things. This is more of a problem I find close up. So close up stuff, it can be difficult, and I was close to coral a lot of the times. What I generally did, instead of facing the stick there front on, I'd adapt it so I'd turn it to the side so it would have one of the front lenses so it wouldn't get into this situation. That's something you can just sort of learn to do to kind of get round this. And it's not all stuff. I generally find where you've got a sort of scene where you're further away from stuff, it's okay. And of course, it's not simple to fix because it's going to change depending on the closeness or how far away you are from the subject. So, example of that, obviously, as I'm facing towards myself, I might see a bit of that sort of shimmer. But if I move the angle around so I'm looking sort of sideways out of one of the lenses, this stuff here is going to be rock solid because there's no stitching involved. The second problem is the nature of the housing means that even if you have it perfectly and it's beautifully clean, you can get reflections in there. I've stopped the video, just have a look at these sections here and here, and when I start the video up you can see we've got some reflections that kind of stay there. Once you see them, it's pretty difficult to unsee them, but again, I'm still happy with the footage I've got versus the GoPro. I'm prepared to live with some of these negative points. Okay, so this is less about how the camera works and more about practicality. One thing I find with Insta is they seem to want you to plug in the camera and edit there. I don't want to do that. I want to have all my footage available and then be able to look at it. One of the first problems you will come across is it doesn't want you to rename stuff. It calls stuff special names, and you can see it's sort of done on a date, time, the file number, and the 00 and 10 is individual files for the front camera and the rear camera. It really doesn't want you messing with that. And so I'd like to call this, you know, like moray footage or shark footage or something like that. Obviously, as I said in the last video, what you can do with this is take it, export it as a 360 piece of footage, and then import that into Final Cut Pro, as I do, and I can do what I like with it. For other people, this is sort of extra hassle and extra editing. So that's the other thing with this. It's like, on the day when I came out of the water and I could upload it to my phone, and then it's kind of like, oh, let's have a look at this ray or this fish or whatever, and I can quickly do that. When I come back and just look at all these, which have completely different looking date stamps to how they looked in my phone, I'm looking at this and thinking, what was I filming then? Because of course you're not just looking forwards, you're looking everywhere. And I was like, what do I think I'm looking at? Am I taking a picture of me swimming down, or am I doing something else? And you know, eventually you see, oh look, there's a turtle. That's probably what I was filming. It's a turtle who's too deep for me to get close to, and I have to go back up pretty quickly. But it's kind of extra editing. Some people aren't about editing, so going in here and looking at it is one thing, and then going through and putting in, you know, keyframe points where you can, you know, do different angles at different times is another thing entirely. One important thing that I forgot to mention is about securing your cameras. Whatever you're going to use, secure them with something. On the GoPro, I've got my filter connected with the string that goes underneath it. That's because you need to get water fully flooded in there to make it work. And what I've done round this bit, I've got this little lanyard that goes around my wrist. It sounds stupid, but because I've done it, make sure you actually have it on your wrist. When I was getting back in the water in a rush several years ago, because look, there's another man to jump in, I thought I had it around my wrist, and then I took both hands off to sort my mask out and found my camera wasn't there anymore. It was sinking down in the water, and I'd lost it there. It was about 12 to 15 meters of water. The bottom, the current had whooshed the sand up, but I couldn't see it, and I hung around there for like 40 minutes and it had completely lost it. It was only the fact I gave up, and then I was swimming back for like 5 minutes. I suddenly saw this tiny stick and I was like, God, that's it. And it was too deep for me to reach, so I had to get one of the boat crew with these massive freediving fins to get it for me. Then I had to tip them $100 for that, because that had very important footage on. So make sure you wear it. The Insta360 idea of this is a bit short-sighted. If you buy the dive kit like I did, they give you this little one which has got this little lanyard on it, which is great, but that's not big enough. On the big one, there's nothing to secure it on. It has got, though, a sort of 1/4-inch standard tripod mount. So I went onto Amazon and I found this little screw thing that I could screw in there like that, and then attach a lanyard that went around my wrist. So if you see any of the footage, you will probably see, weirdly, this little bracelet on my wrist and then no stick, which always looks a bit weird. So at the end of the day, I think part of the reason I'm liking this so much is the convenience factor. It's not as good a quality on single lens as the GoPro, but I kind of have to come to my senses a bit and saying, look, I don't work for National Geographic. My stuff here is just for me. And being able to do things easily and just have the camera in the water and knowing it will take a picture of what's around me is better than the higher quality I would get from the GoPro. I really liked as well. My wife took this several days because she enjoyed filming with it, because again, she didn't have to get it exact, she just have to have it in the water. She's never been interested in having a GoPro before. The one thing where this might be, you know, easier than this, or this at least is as easy, is if you're on scuba. Several years ago, when we went to a different island and we dove, as you can see here, I used a GoPro, and because you've got all that extra time in the water, you're not diving down and holding your breath and so moving about quickly. You've got time to let the fish sort of get used to you. It's very easy to get footage that way. That said, I would still probably use this diving, just because I can capture all the angles. I don't have to think about it, and the stabilisation is way better. So that is my 2 cents. There's no particular reason for doing this. I just happened to use this and I thought, I really like this, and I thought, well, if other people are doing it, they might like to use this instead of GoPro as well. Reliability wise, although this is a few years old and this is brand new, the GoPro ran out of battery even though the battery said it was at 43%. Now that might just be a dodgy battery, I don't know, but I've had previous problems with overheating, it turning itself off, the battery somehow not lasting as it should. Whereas this, I bought a spare battery for it, I used it like all day and I didn't actually need to change and use the spare battery at all. It was really, really good, so I'm liking this better. That's it. So if you're off scuba diving or snorkeling on a holiday, have a think about it, see what you want to do. This video is not sponsored by anyone at all, it's just my personal opinion. There will be affiliate links for this because why not, you know, I got to eat somehow. Anyway, I hope that was useful for some people, and we'll have FPV content coming soon. In the meantime, I'll catch you next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.